Yes. And by the way, for all of you as well for coming out in this weather.
Yes, thank you.
Seriously. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to see the first episode of Criminal Record, a show, 8-episode series. It is so extraordinary. The first 2 will premiere tomorrow night, of course, on Apple TV+. I am so thrilled I'm Jessica Shaw. I'm so thrilled to be joined by Elaine Collins, showrunner, executive producer, and Peter Capaldi, of course, star and producer as well. Elaine, I want to start with you because I understand the idea to commission the show kind of came from your desire to really explore what a confession means.
Yes, I mean, I became sort of obsessed with Making of a Murderer, and particularly the second series, and I loved the female lawyer in it. I just thought she was like somebody out of a drama. And I just became fascinated by how and why people confess to crimes that they might later retract. I don't want to say too much, but it did come from the idea of someone is in prison for something they confessed to. And did they or didn't they do it? Yes. So that was the sort of genesis of the idea. But then obviously we have an amazing writer, Paul Ruttman, who took that and ran with it.
Yeah. And Peter, so they're married. So I could ask how you found out about the role, but I think I know. So let's talk about that early conversation that made you say, yeah, I got to play this guy.
I think I was aware that Elaine had this idea, and that as she was working it up, there was clearly going to be a detective in it who would be a great character. So I kept sort of presenting myself to her as a possibly very good casting for that. But it was more complicated than that, wasn't it, really? Because it was...
I'd spoken to you and Cush about developing a show for you both. And so when I approached Paul, who I originally created a series called Vera with, Paul Ruttman, the writer that is, I said, how about this sort of genesis? It's just a little sort of embryonic idea and these 2 actors. And he sort of went, yeah, I'm in. I think he was very excited about writing for the 2 actors too. And he'd never done that before. And I think he found that really exciting and invigorating.
So it was very unusual. I mean, I've never been in that position before, really, where we were in at the beginning, before the whole thing was written. So all of the writers who were involved, because they brought other writers on as well as Paul, knew who they were writing for. And also we were able to see the scripts develop and discuss them and try and have some, not influence, but sort of some suggestions about how we thought those characters might develop.
You've never played a cop before.
Not really. No, I think I've played a constable. I think I've been
very different.
Yes, all actors have been a constable, but I've never actually played a detective.
It's so interesting because he's so internal.
Yeah.
And you've obviously played roles where not at all internal, just like let me share every thought and swear at you, all over the place. And there are times he's so still. Yeah. And he's very hard to read. Yeah. Was there something that was very appealing about that, about getting to play that I'm not showing my cards kind of guy?
Yeah, I mean, that was a great challenge for me. Because as you say, I mean, most of the roles I play are pretty, out there. I'm front-footed and I like to tell the audience what's going on. And Doctor Who's always, trying to tell stories and trying to, a few Doctor Who fans and tonight, as he tells, takes the cosmos to pieces, you have to do that in a reasonably entertaining way. And then I played another character called Malcolm Tucker, who was a spin doctor, and he did not, he really spoke his mind.
Sure did.
So this, so I knew this was different, and I wanted it to be different. And anyway, there's a function in, I mean, let's not forget that essentially this is a crime drama, a TV crime drama. So there is a function that the role has, which is you have to keep the audience guessing. So you have to not tell them exactly what's going on. But the struggle, I suppose, was, or the new thing for me was, you know, people say when you act for the camera, you say you do nothing. But you can't really do nothing because it's just boring. Unless you happen to be Anthony Hopkins or Daniel Day-Lewis or something like that. If you do nothing, it's just dead. And unless that is what the plot demands for you to be dead, it's boring. So I had to sort of create a kind of inner tempo or landscape that I could plug into so that there was stuff going on. Even though I wasn't directly telling the audience. I wasn't directly giving the audience a clue. I didn't want to have subtext that was saying, we're going in this direction. But I had to be alive. So that was hard.
Do you create a kind of Bible of your character before? Because we do find out many more things about him as the series progresses, but there's a lot that we don't find out.
Yeah, well, I had to make a kind of, I mean, I always kind of vaguely do this. I figure out, it's very easy when the character's the same age as you, so you work out when the character was born and when they went to school and when they went to college and how did they get in with him, how did he become how did he go into the police force, how did he get from Scotland to London and all that kind of stuff, and what were the likely routes that he took. I also noted down the big crimes that occurred in the periods of his life, the genuine, real crimes and things that happened, major things that happened in London, and how he would have been involved, what level of, where would he have been in the police force? Would he have been a constable? Would he have been a new detective? Would he have been a blah, 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 when these big things happened? I don't know whether that's any use at all. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't really know. It's just stuff you do. You know, David Mamet's got a great thing that he says about, about method actors, about all that preparation. He says it's just garlic.
For vampires, yeah.
To frighten away evil spirits. It's just stuff. So I don't know whether that does anything. But I know that what helped me more was I had a little book in which I just put some images, things that I'd taken from newspapers and magazines, and maybe some little doodles that I'd done that were tonally kind of what I thought representative of the character's internal life. So I would sort of look at that before we started. And
what was it like? Tell us things that were in that book.
They were fairly bleak. I wouldn't want to give away too much of what they were.
Okay, fair. Elaine, just this show deals with so much. I mean, we saw some of it in this first episode, but it goes on to really deal with a lot of institutionalized racism, sexism. There are so many things going on, both to the detectives and also to the people involved in the case. And it's just, what was it about that you wanted to explore?
Well, I think in everything that I make, I do like to explore those issues, but I think what's really important is to sneak them in, because I think nobody wants to sit and watch a polemic. So I've always kind of thought of drama as a bit of a Trojan horse, where you have a great story and you have great acting and characters, but you also have something to say that makes the audience not feel like they've been hit over the head with a hammer. But I also don't think you can make a show about modern policing, particularly in London, with everything we know that's happened in the last few years, without tackling those things head on. And also in society generally, racism and misogyny exists. But for me, the important thing was for it to be the everyday stuff, the gaslighting, the stuff that falls through the cracks rather than the big, bad, racist policeman, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. I think about the moment in this episode where Haggerty says, you know, he's a poor man's OJ.
Exactly.
And that, you know, it kind of takes your breath away when you hear him say that line, and it's just, and then you see Cush's reaction.
Well, exactly, but also she's unable to kind of respond to it in the moment, and that happens a lot in life, doesn't it? That somebody will say something racist or sexist or whatever, and you're so taken aback in the moment that you don't respond, and you think, did he mean that? Did she mean that? And you go off and you think about it, and it's, I think that's what interests me, is the stuff that people deal with every day, rather than the kind of, you know, normally, you know, we all like to think, or in drama, everybody's got a smart answer to everything, but in real life, that's not really how it works. And I think it was to try and capture that.
And we have to talk about Cush Jumbo, because she is incredible, and the two of you are... What a pairing, and this cat and mouse that's going on throughout the whole season, and at times you find yourself, oh, okay, I hear what this person's saying, and then 2 seconds later, oh, I kind of hear what this person... And what was it about, I mean, Peter, as you said, these roles were written for the two of you.
Yeah.
How did you know, well, you had worked together a little bit, but how was it... What was it like working together on this?
Well, it was amazing. Well, we both worked with... I worked with Cush first when she was very young, when we did an episode of Torchwood, which was a Doctor Who spin-off. And then I also directed her in a there's a show called Getting On, which is a kind of, which is an American version of, but we did the British version. And you had her in Vera.
Paul and I, who wrote Vera, we cast her in Vera. So she was sort of, I think, in the second season of Vera. So we'd cast her as a regular in it. So we'd all sort of known each other for years.
Yeah. So she's clearly very brilliant. And of course, but in a way, I'd known her as a much younger actress, so it was great seeing her kind of mature and develop into this very skillful and exciting performer. We just knew that would sort of work. But we decided really, without discussing it, we sort of never really rehearsed, you know, because we knew that the key to the series really was this relationship, was this dynamic. And that they were not going to be buddies. This was not going to be, you know, they were, as someone said, the least compatible team in London.
Compatible.
Compatible. I've got combat.
You are compatible.
Yes,
yeah.
the least compatible policing team in London. So we never rehearsed because I wanted to see what she did. And vice versa, I think. So we just sort of responded. What you see is us hearing each other for the first time. And, you know, not everybody can do that, but she's brilliant. So, and I also loved when she, as she does at the end of this episode, you know, runs to people's rescue. Because she's quite a kind of, that character's quite a complicated character, and June doesn't do a lot to endear herself to people, but she's juggling all kinds of things. She's being a mother, you know, she's being a detective, but when somebody's in trouble, she's running towards them.
Yeah.
I thought, that's why you're a cop, you know, which I think is great.
Yeah, it's I jotted down this line where he says, "Who knows what any of us are capable of on any given day?" And when you were saying that, you know, it's really, you think about the kind of dark side of that and the more kind of nefarious part where who knows what we're capable of doing, the depths that we'll go to. But it's also with her at times, I felt that who knows what she could be capable of in these moments of profound crisis.
Yeah, and also that line comes after, well, without giving anything away, where there's been a scene of some violence.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. How did you feel about the fact that your two stars did not want to rehearse?
I personally don't like over-rehearsing for the camera anyway, because I think if actors rehearse too much for the camera, then it loses all the spontaneity. So I think with you, it often goes back to the thick of it, because often you wouldn't get scripts until the very last minute, and Armando doesn't like a lot of rehearsing, and he likes a lot of improv, even if it's just to loosen people up. And I think the acting in that is brilliant, because you don't feel as if people are acting. So I think over-rehearsing is dangerous for the camera, personally. So I liked it, because they were both brilliant. I mean, if they'd been not very good, I wouldn't have liked it, but they were both great.
And it wasn't like we didn't know our lines.
Right.
No, they knew their lines.
We knew our lines, and we're professionals, and we show up, and we do it.
2 seconds in the thick of it, side note, do you ever watch the compilation videos of all of your characters just spewing?
No.
No, you don't. You know there are so many of them.
Are there? No, I haven't seen any of those.
Yes.
I was there.
Right, I guess so. But I'm guessing you did not improvise on this.
On
or
this?
did you? On the, yeah.
There wasn't really any need to improvise. I mean, I think improvisation is just a sort of tool to, unless you're working with people who that's their method of creating the material. It's largely just a tool to make things immediate and give a kind of vigor to the moment. There were odds and ends, but not really. There wasn't really.
Yeah, but if scripts are great, it's disrespectful to the writers to make up your own lines.
Yeah, I don't like to mess around with the scripts, and actors are actors and writers are writers.
Yeah.
A writer's probably spent 6 months to a year working on that material, so they've been around all the houses, so they know it better than But you know what actors are like. They turn up and just think, oh, I don't like this. I think this would be better if I did this, or it would be better if I did that. And often it isn't.
And these scripts are so, or at least how the episode, they're so tight. There's so much that happens. And I wanted to ask you, there are 8 episodes. How did you figure out, because there are a lot of twists and there are a lot of moments where you're going to just, your allegiance will go all over the place throughout the 8 episodes. How did you approach pacing this?
Well, the plan was always to try and stay ahead of the audience, which is, audiences are very sophisticated now, so that's quite difficult to do. So the plan was always to kind of try and stay ahead and keep everybody second guessing. And I think particularly around Peter's character, like, is he, to rug pull a lot, just when you think you know him, something else happens that sort of changes your mind slightly. So we'd storylined a lot of it before we started writing the script. We had a Bible on the series before we went to script. So although that changed along the way, we had a lot of those sort of tent poles in, which I think was really important, because I don't know how other people feel, but sometimes I start off watching a crime thriller and the first couple of episodes are amazing, and then it gets to the end and it's kind of obvious to me nobody had worked out what the end was going to be, and they're sort of making it up in the last 3 episodes, and I find that quite frustrating. So we tried not to do that. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like either you can tell very early on exactly how it's going to play out, or sometimes you're like, they're just pulling things out that make no sense in the plot. And
and it gets to the end, and then you sort of think, okay, and then you think back and you think, but that literally makes no sense.
Right.
It's like they'll make up the killer at the end, and you're like, but okay.
It's interesting to me that Making a Murderer was one of your inspirations, a documentary. Not a scripted show.
Yeah, because it was incredible. I mean, it was like drama, that series, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
It was fabulous. Yeah, and beautifully made and upsetting.
Peter, tell us about the research that you did, if you did. Are you a researcher, or do you, or you just go right in?
Well, the reason I'm laughing is because I think, well, I don't really know what I do. You know, it's not like I have I'm a professional. I mean, I learn my lines and turn up on time. And, you know, if we're running out of time, I'll figure out some way to get the scene quickly done. But with regard to actually having a technique of figuring out how you act and how you prepare, yes, I've developed some things that I do. But the older I get, the more open I am to really just seeing what happens. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean, I'm willing to take any route that helps. Any ideas, anybody that's got any ideas about how to act better, I will
Write them on your cards.
Yeah.
Pass them.
But in terms of research, you know, I think the important thing was to create an inner life and not to spend my time trying to figure out what car a policeman drives, or what time he goes to work at, or how much he gets paid, or, you know, what his locker's like, or all this stuff. Maybe that would have helped, I don't know, but I didn't have enough. I thought my time was better spent trying to develop an inner life, and that sounds kind of pretentious. I don't really mean it. I mean by that, trying to figure out what this person thinks about things.
Yes.
Because he's not me, so I think differently about most things. From him. Some of them I agree. So how does he think? How does he behave? How did he get to where he is, and where is he going? But also I felt that the character was very, and from the start, I'd sort of said this to Elaine and Paul, that he was really, although he was very contemporary, he was also classical in a kind of film noirish sense, you know, because that's a classic character of film noir, is the hard-beaten, experienced cop who you never really quite know which way they're going to go. And also I love that James Ellroy's description of film noir as being a genre which is based upon the central concept that we're all fucked. Yeah. And I found that tremendously useful.
Yeah. I mean, I was wondering what you made of him. Although I guess what was it like to kind of live in his skin? At times you're like, you know, you watch it and you're like, oh, this guy, gosh.
It was great because it was so interesting. Because it's a kind of conjuring trick. I mean, that's the great thing about doing crime drama. It's one of those genres that allows you to explore people psychologically quite deeply, but at the same time, you have to have a chase. You know, you have to have a shootout. You have to have, Elaine will tell you, one of my most favorite moments in the whole thing, which I've never done in my life before, is when I got to, you know, the police have those ribbons they put up that say, do not cross? Well, I got to go like that.
It's true.
But I've arrived.
Did you tell Paul, just write that scene in, just write that scene?
No, I just turned up and it was there, and I thought, I'm crossing that. I'm lifting that and crossing that. It was quite hard to play, but there was also the way we worked with both directors, with Jim and Sean, our second director, was we would not agree on a definitive performance. We did not say, this is exactly how it should be. We'd say, let's try it that way, or let's try it this way. And so we would generate material and see what worked best.
That's so interesting. I feel like that's probably unlike a lot of productions.
I think so. I mean, maybe it's because of the privileged position I was in.
No, but I think you do that as an actor, because Stephen would always say that in Doctor Who too. I mean, you don't come in and have exactly one way you're going to do something. You play with things. You're kind of not afraid to play with on the set and to try things different ways. And I think that is very intrinsic to who you are as an actor. And I think that it certainly makes it really interesting in the edit, because I think there's just so much to choose from. I mean, I think what that can do is put you at risk if somebody doesn't have a good eye in the edit, because then they could choose something that isn't quite right. But I think because we were in charge, it meant that we could really tastefully choose all the best stuff all the way through.
Yeah.
But that is a great thing, that you do things a lot of different ways. You do have that gift.
Well, sometimes you can sense when you're doing it that there's another way. And it might be right or it might be wrong. And if you're with collaborators who you trust, you can say, well, let's try it and see. And if it's wrong, we'll throw it out. And if it's right, we got something that we didn't expect to get.
So when you were putting it together at the end and choosing which takes, were there things, did the character change from how you initially conceived him to be, or the show or the storyline at all?
The funny thing about this character is, although obviously the dark side of the character is very unlike Peter, you know, he isn't that dark person that Hegarty is. The sort of introverted nature of him and the sort of quietness of him is actually very familiar to me. You know, that is a more familiar Peter to me than Malcolm Tucker, for example, who is nothing like him at all. Although, interestingly, it is like that thing of you saying, how do you shake it off? Do you take it home? When he was shooting Thick of It, I did have to say to him a couple of times, you are swearing all the time. And we've got a teenage daughter. Because it was so habitual, because you were improvising all the time.
Yeah.
But I think that sort of stillness and that quietness, I think, is not unfamiliar to me. I think Peter is actually quite a shy, introverted person. He's not an extrovert at all. I'm much, much more social than he is.
But I would be like, where's the fucking remote? Where's the fucking remote? You know, that's the way it was in the thick of it.
So I can talk to no one. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. What did your daughter make of those moments?
Well, it was just funny because she was a teenager by then, but it is a funny situation when you're trying to teach your teenager to sort of like not be obnoxious and swear all the time, which they sort of do, and her dad's doing it, so.
Yeah. What was the most challenging day on the set for you?
For me or
Both of you.
It was all pretty challenging, wasn't it? I mean, it's pretty hard making a show. And I would say that actually, Peter has got an exec credit on this. And I would say genuinely, I mean, that is often just a credit. But he really was a meaningful exec. He really was involved in a lot of it. He came in all the recce's with me. So I think we were really in it together, weren't we? But it was tough. It's really tough.
I mean,
you know. It's a big show to make for a streamer, for Apple, and you're trying to set the bar quite high for yourself, and it was hard.
Yeah, and things go wrong, and there are also a lot, and sometimes people let you down, and sometimes situations get out of control. They're not very entertaining stories, but you can be cornered as a production because you only have X amount of money and you only have X amount of time, and Apple want the show delivered by then, and your ambition is to try and make it as good as you possibly can, and sometimes circumstances make that impossible, and sometimes difficult decisions have to be made and difficult phone calls have to be made. And I would actually sit in kind of amazement at Elaine's courage and energy and bravery, because it was she who made this show, who put it together, who was there every single day, who has to get it from being a blank page to being in 130 countries tomorrow night.
Yeah.
In a short space of time with a limited amount of money. Someone said to me the other day, what does an executive producer do? And so I told them. And I told them how, and I'm not just saying this because she's my wife, because executive producers don't get the coverage. You know, it didn't exist. There was no show. There was no idea. There was nothing. And Elaine felt she could make something. And she did. But you want an answer to it. You want a lighter answer than that as to what was the most difficult day. We did well. There was a riot, but we weren't there the day of the riot. I think that was quite difficult.
No, not in that. There's a riot in the show, by the way. It wasn't the crew.
I think there was a day where in one of the episodes there's a tree which had it sounds odd, but there was a tree that had a central role to play. Mm-hmm. And the whole crew had gathered around this tree.
Oh yeah, we were shooting around the tree, yeah.
And why it had a central role was because there was a little boy who had lost something in the tree. And then the Parks Department appeared and said that tree is diseased and you can't go near it.
Yeah.
And you can't.
The entire crew, so we had to sort of quickly, yeah. And we have another episode where there's a fire, which I won't get into too much detail, but all the fire stuff didn't turn up. I mean, you know, you're just a victim of those kind of circumstances and you're scrabbling. But the point is when those things happen, instead of panicking, you've just got to go, okay, what can we do? What can we do instead? Mm-hmm. Because we have no option but to keep moving through the day. Yeah,
there is a scene in episode 7 where there was we had a lot of dialogue. It was very important dialogue, and it was all set out in the street at night outside these kind of projects. And the rain started falling, and we couldn't shoot. We were on a night shoot, and there was no way we could make this work. So we had to very, very quickly come up with some other idea. So we decided to do it in the foyer, where the lift shafts are, and with the rain pouring down outside. And it was really tough because we had to reshape the dialogue and reshape all the movement. But it's one of my favorite scenes because it's like Key Largo, and we're there, and we can't get out, and all the pressure, this rain is putting this pressure on us. So sometimes something that's difficult turns out well.
Yeah, it's a bit of a blessing. I love hearing the two of you talk about each other because you're fans. You're fans of each other personally and professionally. So what is it like working together?
It's great.
It was brilliant.
It was really good.
You know you can't leave it at that.
But it really was, actually.
It was, yeah.
I don't think we had a single... I mean, we've been together 38 years. You know, we are genuinely sort of best friends. But actually it was... I can honestly say, I was saying this to Peter today, I was thinking about it, and I actually genuinely don't remember us having a single crossword with each other during it, actually, at all. That makes it sound like we never have a crossword. That's not the case. But it was like, in a situation where it's you, not against the world, but sort of trying to kind of push this enormous great rock up a hill, you know, we just very quickly become a unit, don't we? Yeah. So I felt incredibly supported during it all because it's really tough in knowing you've got to sort of get from here to there with this juggernaut and having your best friend who you also happen to think is brilliantly creative and you trust their feedback on that journey with you. I thought was amazing. And also have to give a shout out here to Paul Ruttman, you know, also exec producer and writer. You know, he also was just like an incredible sort of companion on this journey, and a truly wonderful writer. So we did all really support each other through it, and that was an amazing experience.
Yeah. What I found funny was being an actor and executive producer. When I was an actor and I would come to work, people would say, "Good morning, would you like a cup of coffee?" and this. And truly, when I was an executive producer, which might be the next day, I was ignored. I didn't have a trailer or anything like that.
Well, you did have a trailer.
Well, of course, when I was acting, Elaine would come in
I moved
my
into
trailer,
it, actually.
and
I
would,
genuinely
and
moved
have
into his
meetings
trailer.
and all that stuff like that in my trailer. But when I was an exec producer, they just largely ignored me, and that was good for me.
Humbling. Well, we have so many questions for you. I'm going to try and do this without my glasses, which I think washed away in the storm. Peter, you're known for playing roles that demand big, robust performances. And this is small and subtle. And how did this change your process?
Well, for the better, I hope. Obviously, it needed some help. It just, well, as I've talked about already, it just meant concentrating more on an inner life than all those other roles. You throw a lot of stuff out there because you have to. Mm-hmm. But with this, I think it loosened me up quite a lot. Mm-hmm.
Did it change how you think about other roles that you want to take in the future?
Yeah.
Did it? How so?
I think this was more sort of complicated, a more complex character in a sense that I'm used to playing, and I really enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. So I would like to do more like that, yeah.
Helen asks, we were just talking about this a little bit. You both had long and illustrious careers, but this is your first professional collaboration. And we talked about this a second ago, but what I love that Helen asked is, why right now? Why this point in your careers and lives was this the right time to collaborate on a show?
I don't think we even thought about the timing of it, really. I mean, first of all, I think what sort of essentially changed for me was that I formed my own little company a few years ago. So this is sort of the first green light for my company. So I think I'm just at an age and a place in my life where I just want to do what I want to do, and I don't want to do what I don't want to do. And why the best time I could have in my life is to hang out with Peter. So, it's just that's where we are in life. We're just not interested in not having a good time anymore.
No, it wasn't a conscious kind of sense of, we've got to work together. And we have worked professionally together.
But not for a long time.
Not for a long time. But we met together as actors on stage. So we worked on stage together, and also we did a film together. And then Elaine went into producing and did Vera and Shetland, these great, huge, successful shows. But we weren't sitting around saying, let's do something like that. It was just that the material itself, I think, we were ready. I wanted to do this show. Mm-hmm. If she'd gone with somebody else, I would have dissuaded her from that, but she never.
That would have been so awkward, especially since it was written for you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then gone with someone else.
Yeah.
Peter, does music inspire you as a performer, and do you listen to? I want to ask you, Elaine, about the music in this show because it's so excellent. But when you're getting into a character, do you have in addition to your book, do you have a kind of playlist that you listen to?
Yeah, definitely. As I say, anything to help. Mm-hmm. I can't remember exactly what I had going on with this, but I remember for Malcolm Tucker, I used to play Scary Monsters all the time, mm-hmm. and Super Creeps, because that was kind of very aggressive and very out there.
You and Paul used to swap music all the
Yeah,
time,
Paul
because
would
Paul
send me some
Ruttman's
bits.
very, very into music, so you and he would be sending each other playlists the whole time, wouldn't you?
I had quite a lot of dark music in this that would...
He listens to music a lot to write.
Yeah, and there were some dark numbers that would take me to dark places.
What was your Doctor Who playlist?
Doctor Who. I don't think I had time to listen to anything in Doctor Who. I think you just get on with it all the time. I can't remember, really. I can't. Not Roy Orbison, no. Why do you say Roy Orbison? Jimi Hendrix, all of that stuff, yeah. No, I can't really remember. It'll come back to me in the hotel tonight. I'll have lots of great answers.
What about you, Elaine? Were there, I mean, the music in the show adds so much to it, and it's haunting and
Oh my God,
foreboding.
I love the score in this show so much. And so Neil and Mikey have never worked together before. Mikey does his Gangs of London, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And Neil was in Massive Attack, and this is the first time they've worked together. I think for me, the initial thing about the score for the show was I 100% did not want music that sounded like it came from a crime show that, you know, was telling you what to feel. Oh, here comes the scary bit, you know. Oh, here comes the funny bit. I didn't want the kind of score that told you what you should be feeling. They've just pulled it off so brilliantly. I completely love this score on this show. We all do, don't we?
Yeah.
Alec wants to know, is it difficult to play characters who are, it either says nude or rude, so I'm just going to ask both.
Both. Yeah. No, it's easy in both counts.
Are you coming back to Broadway anytime soon?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And would you do a musical?
Oh, I'd love to do a musical, yeah. But I don't know who'd have me, but no, musicals are great.
How do you, I mean, speaking of going back to stage, since you've done film and theater and TV, how do you sort of decide, okay, I'm really kind of itching to do this kind of thing?
The bank balance really has something to do with that, especially with theatre, because usually if you do theatre, you're not going to earn any money. So you've got to have enough money to do it. I'll say to Elaine, do you mind? I think I'll want to do this play, but it's going to be in the West End for 6 months, and it's not going to be very much money. Can we do that? I don't know. I really like doing plays, but there's such a substantial commitment. I mean, not just financially, but you know, they take over your entire life, which is a wonderful thing. And of course, you get to go on stage and you have this wonderful reaction from the audience and stuff like that, but it's so time-consuming and so much energy. So you have to be ready to do it, I think.
Yeah. From Katie, I'm a costume designer, and I wanted to know if there was a part of your costume or a specific piece that helped you get into character. I love that question.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. I found a little drawing that I'd made of... Hegarty always wears... He's got quite cool suits, but he always wears little button-down polo shirts. And there's something about the shape of that. There's something about the contrast between a sharp suit and this casual polo shirt thing, which suggests power. It suggests I don't have to wear a tie anymore because I've been around the block. And also in the UK, the polo shirt has a slightly yobbish history as well. There's some quite kind of unpleasant characters can be seen in polo shirts. Unlike in America.
All wonderful. All polo shirt wearers. Yeah, I mean, I think about, I know I've heard you speak about, even, how the doctor would look and
Yeah.
how, and the, being inspired by like Bowie or, and do you, when you have the look with a character you're playing, does it just feel like, yes, like this clicks in?
You gotta look, it's got to make you feel like that character. You got to look in the mirror and think, oh, that's, I feel like Haggerty. With Doctor Who, you've got to feel like Doctor Who. It's quite a difficult thing to get right. But, and whether or not other people think you look like Doctor Who is irrelevant.
Sure is,
You have got to feel like you look like the Doctor. So the selection of those clothes is very important. But it's the same with this. It was, I loved his look. And it took quite a while to get it. Because everybody just wants you to wear shirts and ties and all that kind of stuff. But there was just something about that, the polo shirt thing, which I liked. But it was funny finding a little drawing. It's just a very simple few lines, and it says exactly what it is.
Since I know there's like one or two Doctor Who fans here, I have to ask you, when you said, when you find that outfit, and then you have to feel like you are that person, did that come to you on day one of shooting of, oh, okay, I am 100% this person?
No, because on day one, which was 10 years ago on Monday, I think, on Sunday, because Stephen Moffat sent me a little photograph, a text yesterday or the day before with a picture of my first day. I was in Matt Smith's costume, which I was thrilled that I was thin enough in those days to wear. So that was very exciting. And then that whole episode, I wasn't in the Doctor's costume. And they make such a thing about the costume, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. But I was very lucky. They took me to costume houses and I had to try on everything. And people genuinely said, why don't you try a scarf? As if that was going to be a new thing.
A really long one.
I know.
Or this floppy hat. And you do all that stuff. But in the back of my head always, I had this kind of gradually coming into focus kind of sense of something sharper. But nobody seemed to want to do that. And I was very lucky I got to work with the great British designer Paul Smith. Paul Smith.
Also Paul Smith.
Also Paul Smith. We
Can't afford Paul Smith.
We get a very good discount. But I went to him and said, can you help me here? I have this idea for something. And he said, yeah. So we went to his workshop and they just had piles of clothes and I tried these and they found this sort of Crombie kind of coat and a spotty shirt we had like a Bob Dylan kind of spotty shirt and tight trousers and he put it on and I said, well, that was it for me. That worked. But trying to convince everybody else was the difficult thing. And then also trying to make them keep that. Because for some reason, everybody seems to think, well, wouldn't it be great if we added this frilly thing here, or if we did this, or put a bit of velvet in there, or blah, blah, blah. So it becomes exhausting trying to just stick to the one idea. But that was, and I have some pictures, which nobody's seen, of that original outfit, which was brilliant. And the BBC struggled to copy it. But it's a brilliant little picture of Doctor Who to me.
Yeah. I don't know, there's an anniversary coming up. You could send it out. Just saying. So first of all, I love that you have that you have collaborated with people and had these roles that you felt like I need to weigh in on this. This is something that's important to me, even though I think on some productions it would be like, no, you're the actor, you don't get to weigh in on wardrobe.
I wouldn't accept that. I wouldn't, because that's what do you know about Doctor Who?
Right.
I don't mean you. I mean, how do you know more than me? It's me that's got to play, or whatever this character is. I don't mean that in an aggressive way. I think most actors would do that. They would say, this has to work for me. It's hard, though, because people get offended. And people have to do their job as well. And also you have to accept that there are people who are much better at that than I am. There are costume people who are much better at figuring out how you look and how that should all work. They've got better taste than me. And I've got to accept that and defer to that. But they also have to understand that I'm exploring this character in quite a deep level. And I have an idea about it. And we have to explore that also.
There are some characters that you have played for several seasons, which of course leads me to the question, because there is a possibility at the end of these 8 episodes that there could be more. So I guess I'd love to hear from both of you. Peter, how would you feel about getting back into this character? And Elaine, what's going on in your head about that?
I think we're so grateful to be here and to have got to this point, of making the show and having it out there, that we haven't really thought about a future, because this has been what's taken up all of our time for the last 18 months. And
yeah, I think we've just been very focused on, it's been like 2 years, really, of our lives. So we've just been very focused on getting it out there and seeing if people like it, that we haven't really thought beyond that.
yeah.
I think it could do either. I think it's very, very satisfying as it is. But I agree that there is the potential also. But, who knows?
Well, it is very satisfying, and it would be satisfying to see more. I want to thank you both so much, Elaine Collins and Peter Capaldi. Criminal Record, you got to see the first episode. The first 2 premiere tomorrow night on Apple TV+. Thank you again. Congratulations on the show. And really, a real thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
It did not wash away.
Thank you so much.